together. They are independent, however, they depend on each other for financial support. She needs them to pass her budgets as well as so much more going on. So for the sake of moving forward and for her even cabinet to be passed, she needs to reconcile with the County Assembly of Meru for peace to prevail. If that doesn't happen, even if number one himself comes through, then they will go back to the same drawing table in 6 months' time.
All right, so you're saying there's humble pie to be eaten on both sides?
Definitely.
If they're to work together.
For Meru County to move forward, as at the moment, it's only 4 months in. They haven't passed her cabinet. She hasn't really begun putting her foot on the ground. She's done a lot of groundwork. She's a very popular person, and she's been accused of populism. And they say there's a difference between populism and administration of government. So many politicians have a lot of popularity. However, when it comes to the down business of administering, becomes a challenge. And that's why the Senator for Nairobi, while speaking at that Senate briefing, he said that there's a need for more leaders to go through a lot of induction in terms of how to deal with both parties when coming into the devolved units.
Okay, so has there been any resolution with regard to the first gentleman? I believe we have first lady, so I'm going to assume we call him the first gentleman. And also, in terms of, I know they didn't call it a ward fund per se, but there was a fund that they were calling it, I believe, an equalization fund during the Senate hearings.
Yes.
Has there been resolution on those two issues?
So those are some of the issues that will be under consideration in that task force that the Deputy President was alluding to when he was speaking to the MCAs on Sunday. Remember, that meeting was also heavy on the members of Parliament, the 9 members of Parliament, the woman member of county, a member of Parliament for the county, as well as the Senator. The Senator yesterday was here, and he was speaking to that conversation, and he was asked, are you the driving force behind this machinery that is the Meru County Assembly? And he was very critical and said, hey, I am one of the persons who has tried to mediate between the two parties. It hasn't really gelled together. However, for the sake of the county of Meru, there is need for the waters to calm a bit, because it's 4 months in and it's a bit too early, and some of the concerns of the county units is that the governors should be given a bit more time, a bit 2.5 years into their administrations, for even any consideration of there being an indicator that they would want to be impeached from office. They're saying it happened a little bit too early, so there's need for her to have been given time to at least constitute an administration and start working for the people of Meru County.
All right, so just finally on this particular subject, before I move on to another report, that's a big story this morning. The senator you're making reference to, one of the charges against her, if I remember correctly, was that she sought to vilify him in the public space.
So the senator had a really different tone when you were speaking yesterday. He's of a conciliatory tone, and I think those are some of the undertones that were happening in Madeira on Sunday evening. I think President William Ruto is eager to have this bit of turmoil within Meru County to be subverted. Remember, it paints a picture of Makueni County during the early terms of President Uhuru Kenyatta. He faced a similar challenge with the MCAs. And it seems to echo that first term of Uhuru Kenyatta. Many are saying maybe Professor Kivutha Kibwana should give Kawera Mwangaza a bit of an understanding of how to deal with members of county assembly. And just to be able to muddle those murky waters in order to survive. At some point, if some groups have an upper hand above you, maybe it's time to really cede ground a bit, not because you're weak or you're not defending your position, but it's important for the better good of the entire county. So as things stand, President William Ruto is eager to have a resolution as fast as possible, and he doesn't also want at the onset of his administration to have trouble in the devolved units. So probably it will go the same way President Uhuru Kenyatta really stepped in to ensure that Makueni County did not send packing Professor Kivutha Kibwana, and look at how his development record went through the 2 terms that he was in office.
All right, so something else we'll be looking at this morning in the course of these next 2 hours is also the relationship between the national and the county governments. I saw written communication from the Nairobi senator as far as statements made by DP Rigathi Gachagua as concerns the running of Nairobi County. Gachagua, according to Ruto's working plan, is in charge of mediating, or rather oiling, greasing the running of between the national and the county governments. But first, before then, residents of Elbagon in the county of Nakuru are decrying continued sale and consumption of adulterated alcohol following the death of more than 4 people in the area in a span of weeks. The residents say that the number of people who've lost their lives from the illicit brew could be higher, and NTV's Ruth Sarmwe filed this report.
Kasarani slums in Elbagon town is in grief following the death of more than 4 people who are said to have died from consumption of alcohol. Here, friends have gathered to comfort the family of Samuel Njoroge Nyokafi, who died on Thursday last week. His family says that his death was brought by his love for the bottle.
Akachukuliwa na daktari, wakaongea, akaaga kabla hata hajalazwa kwa hospitali.
A few meters from this home is the family of Timothy Njuguna, who died on Friday at the Elbagon hospital after a short illness.
Alikuwa ni mtu ameharibika mwili juu ya pombe. Ile kitu imemfanya akuwe mtu mlevi sana. Sana sana kwa sababu ya kazi. Unajua Kenya hakuna kazi. Anaanza kukunywa pombe. Na hapo ndio watu wamekibiria.
The residents say that the number of alcohol-related deaths could be more.
Hapa tuko kuna kijana amekufa. Isili wako comrade, watu wamekufa sana. Isili ni watu 5. Madhuke ni watu 2, comrade ni 1, Sarama ni 2. Kwa wiki moja ni watu zaidi ya 10.
This community is saddened by the rising number of deaths from what they term as a preventable cause.
Watoto wetu wamekufa. Watoto wetu wamekuwa waizi. Wanatuiba mkorofea, wanatuiba viazi, hata nini wanachukua. Wanakunywa, wanarara kwa mtaro. Wengine wanabeba kama magunia.
Vijana hawasomi, wamekataa mashule sababu ya pombe.
Despite the nuisance caused by this addiction, efforts by some of the residents to fight the sale and consumption of alcohol in the area has been met with threats and intimidation.
Atuongeage kwa sauti kubwa juu kiongea unakuta umejiweka kwa mashida. Unakuja kuchomewa kwako. Ama unataimiwa na huko unachapwa. Sasa tunaogopa kuongea.
Residents believe more can be done to curb the menace.
Wamejaribu lakini pombe ni nyingi sana Elba wawezi peke yao.
On the other hand, security agencies say that they are yet to receive reports on alcohol-related deaths, indicating that most of the fatalities occur in hospital. Ruth Sarmwe, NTV, Nakuru.
The rising tension between Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has now taken a post-2022 political turn. Political analysts argue that there is a ploy by the DP to position himself as the kingpin of the Mount Kenya region and bolster his position ahead of the 2027 general election. Is there more than meets the eye? NTV's political affairs reporter Vincent Odur interrogates.
The rising political tension between Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has continued to elicit mixed reactions.
So, waheshimiwa, yesterday,
the feud has attracted bitter exchanges between leaders from Western region who are supporting Sakaja and those from Mount Kenya region who are behind Gachagua. Political analysts argue that with Mudavadi perceived to be the kingpin of Western region, the deputy president is using the feud as a strategy to consolidate support from the Mount Kenya region.
But this is a brilliant political move on the part of the deputy president in terms of trying to consolidate power in Central, and also to come out to look like he's pro Central interests within Nairobi, the interests of the Central Kenya business community within Nairobi. So definitely, politically speaking, this is a ploy to grab the utamaki, the leadership of the Kikuyu nation.
Well, it's really not a feud in such. It is Deputy Gachagua struggling very hard to be recognized as a leader of something. And so he's been doing his best to let everybody know that he's supposedly the new leader of the mountain, since Uhuru did not do very well, or seems to be on the decline. So, and one way of doing that is to let the people of the mountain believe that he's protecting their interests. So in protecting their interests, he sometimes gets into some problems. Whether the people in the mountain buy that or not is another matter.
The deputy president has opposed the plan by Governor Sakaja to relocate a section of public service vehicles from the Nairobi Central Business District, accusing Sakaja of seeking to persecute business people from a certain community in the capital. However, Sakaja has stuck to his guns, warning Gachagua against trying to divide residents of Nairobi and leaders along ethnic lines.
Every major leader in this country is a tribal kingpin. Kalonzo is backed by the Kamba community. Raila Odinga may have it a bit more diverse, but is definitely backed by the Luo community. William Ruto was backed by the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin community. So in as far as the calculations for the deputy president are concerned, then he does need a community to back him, and that is most likely where his logic is.
Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna, through a statement, wants DP Gachagua to stop interfering with the mandate of Sakaja, saying, "We were elected by people from all tribes and cannot be told that the interest of any one tribe overrides the interest of everyone else. Changing the city cannot happen by making it a large kiosk paradise or a big matatu terminus under the guise Kazi ni Kazi." The Mount Kenya region largely backed President Ruto in the August 2022 presidential election. Will Gachagua's plan to make inroads in the region put him in trouble with his boss?
Our president will definitely try to forge different coalitions and different arithmetics to ensure that he crosses the 50% plus one in the next election. That goes without saying. Now, for sure, the Central Kenya seems to have voted for him as a person and not just for Rigathi Gachagua. Now, whether Rigathi will be able to win the hearts and minds of the Central Kenya people and move those votes away from the president to himself remains to be seen. But
Rigathi would like to claim that he's the one who made Ruto succeed. But it is not the case. So I don't think he'll get in trouble with Ruto as such. But he's going to get in trouble with other people in the mountain or other places. He would like to outshine Salam Mudavadi, who has been claiming to be in charge of the Western region. And the question is, who is bigger than the other? We have that going on. But for Rigathi, he's trying very hard to be recognized as the leader of the mountain. And he may not be doing a very good job, unfortunately for him. People of the mountain don't believe in kings. For someone to run around saying that he's a king, they don't believe in kings or in other kings. So I just want common sense. And from the time of Iregi, a long time ago, people just want somebody who is fair and reasonable, and sounds as if he's shows signs of maturity, serious maturity. So there are expectations that may not be going very well for Gachagua.
Currently, Gachagua is the senior-most politician in Mount Kenya region, and both he and Mudavadi have been touted as future presidential hopefuls. Vincent Odur, NTV.
President William Ruto has signed his first executive order of 2023, where he's laid out functions within his government, including the key roles for both Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi. Despite the seeming Cold War between Gachagua and Mudavadi over their roles, Mudavadi's functions have been enhanced as he now takes on the role of supervisor of the government's development agenda. At the same time, Gachagua has taken on new roles, including supervising reforms in the coffee sub-sector. In these changes, DP Rigathi Gachagua will now be in charge of the coffee sector reforms, in addition to functions domiciled in the office of the Deputy President, which include continuing to deputize the President in the execution of his functions. The DP will chair cabinet committees and oversee the implementation of cabinet decisions across all ministries and state departments. He will also coordinate intergovernment relations between the national government and county governments, including chairing the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council. DP Gachagua will be expected to liaise with constitutional commissions and independent officers in matters that require intervention by the national government, including budget policy formulation and implementation of their recommendation, and also coordinate, planning and supervise implementation of development partner funded programs and projects, as well as any other functions that may be assigned to him by the President. On the other hand, President Ruto put Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi in charge of coordinating the working relationship between Parliament and the Executive. He will be in charge of the government's delivery services, which now replaces the Presidential Delivery Unit. He will chair and coordinate national government legislative agenda across all ministries and state departments in consultation with and for transmission to the party or coalition leaders in Parliament. The Prime CS will also oversee the implementation of national government policies and programs and projects in liaison with the ministry responsible for interior and national administration. The Prime CS will chair the Principal Secretaries' committees and supervise the technical monitoring and evaluation of government policy programs and projects. Mudavadi will continue to assist the President and Deputy President in the coordination and supervision of government ministries and state departments and any other function as may be assigned to him by the President. The two officers will now have two Principal Secretaries each instead of the Principal Administrative Secretaries earlier in place. All right, I'm curious to hear what our statecraft expert in the studio, Dr. Mumonza, has to say about those designated duties. But first, hundreds of, and this is also something both of them can actually comment on, Leila, both our panelists this morning, hundreds of private security guards have been rendered jobless and more than 2,000 private security firms seemingly pushed out of business following their re-registration by the Private Security Regulatory Authority. Out of more than 2,000 firms, only 183 companies have been registered and licensed as corporate private security providers in Kenya, as per the Gazette notice issued by the Director General of the Private Security Regulatory Authority. Fazul and the gentleman in question there is Fazul Mohammed. And as NTV's Duncan Haimba reports, the affected companies have condemned the move, terming it illegal.
It is this legal notice number PSRS-001/2023 that has caused panic among hundreds of private security companies across the country. In the Gazette notice published on January 3rd, the Private Security Regulatory Authority has notified private security service providers, users of private security services, and the general public that only 183 companies have been registered and licensed in Kenya. It goes ahead to state that in view of the legal notice and as further provided under Section 69(1) of the Private Security Regulation Act number 13 of 2016, it shall be an offence for a person to 1. operate as a private security service provider without being the holder of a valid license under the Act, and it shall also be an offence for a person to hire, employ, or otherwise engage the services of any unlicensed private security firm or unregistered private security guard. The authority says the 5-year certificate of registration is the only proof of having been registered and licensed with the provisions of the Private Security Regulation Act No. 13 of 2016. Protective Security Industry Association Chairman Cosmas Mutava, who is also the Managing Director of Marco Security Limited, and Abdurrahman Omar, the manager of Roma Security Services, are among those affected by the notice.
This is misplaced because these are security firms who have been operating for more than 40 years. They have not been given the reason as to why they should not be operating in our country.
Kila kampuni ujue hapo kuna wengine wana watu 1000 na wengine watu wana 600. So hiyo ukipiga hesabu hiyo hapo ni watu wengi sana.
They say the move is likely to create a crisis given the effect it will have on both the companies and the employees.
Na watu chini wanasota. Na hata serikali imeshindwa kuajiri hao. Mimi nimepata ajira kutoka kwa mtu binafsi. Nimeweza kuajiri na kusaidia watu binafsi. Huoni kwamba ni changamoto nimesaidia ili kusaidia mpaka jamii?
PSIA says out of its 150 company membership, so far 64 have confirmed their deregistration, which includes Marco Security Limited, that has over 800 employees.
Having unemployment in the security sector is very tricky because these are people who you are laying off, they don't have anything to eat, and they know all your security apparatus, including CCTVs, including alarms, cash in transit. You just lay them off in one day because of a gazette notice is very tricky.
Roma Security Services, that is based in Malindi, says its 175 employees will be affected by the move, accusing the authority of impunity and high-handedness.
Na kule order ilitoka kwamba hiyo biashara isifanyike mpaka ruling itakapotoka. Tulikuwa tunatarajia ruling itoke mwaka jana mwezi wa 6, lakini koti mpaka sasa hajatoa ruling. Wamezuka na mbili nyingine na kupeana hizo stakabadhi bila ya kujulisha kama board katika zile bodi zinazosimamia private security companies hapa.
Affected companies will be moving to court seeking to have the PSRA Director General Fazul Mohammed charged for what they say is blatant contempt of court. Apart from the firms and the employees who will be affected by that gazette notice issued by the government on 3rd of January, common people might also feel the pinch because they are used to such, be it day or night, security at their doorsteps that now might stand withdrawn. Duncan Haemba, NTV, Nairobi.
Leila, the Fazul Mohammed in this report is the same Fazul Mohammed, if I understand, or if I remember correctly, which I believe I do, is the same one who was in charge of the NGO board when there was all this, and my script says private security firms furore. So at the time, there was a furore over the registration of NGOs and deregistration of NGOs.
Same guy.
Same gentleman.
Tall, dark, and handsome.
All right, Leila. Okay. So speaking of... Now, I won't continue with that in that train of thought. But this morning, we're decoding the conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Dr. Hassan Hanenje, Director, Horn Institute. Dr. Hannah Macharia, Peace and Security Expert. She's in studio as well. And Dr. Mumonzao, Security Advisor and Statecraft Expert. But first, as is our custom, we take a look at the Daily's front page of the Daily. Oh, Leila, since you're here with me this morning, why don't we transition? Let's start with the Taifa Leo, right? Okay, there we go.
So, Ruto ampokeza majukumu ya kushirikisha idara za serikali ya kitaifa, naibu rais akipewa county. Mudavadi Apanda Bay. And you look at how his image has been portrayed in the paper, and wanasema siasa kwenye agizo la rais lililotolewa jana, mkuu wa mawaziri ametwikwa majukumu yenye hadhi ya kitaifa, kwa mfano kushirikisha utendakazi wa idara mbalimbali za serikali kama vile bunge na baraza la mawaziri. Let me speak to a conversation that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua had on Sunday. There was a church service in Nanyuki County, and when he was speaking about the administration of the Kenya Kwanza government, he was asking President William Ruto to lead from the front and not to delegate his critical duties like was done in the previous administration. And he was saying in Swahili, and he was alluding to the fact that we panga kazi yako, usiwache watu wengine wakupange kama ile serikali ya kule ilisambaratika kwa sababu hakukuwa na mtu wa kusimamia utendakazi wa kazi serikalini. So once this new administration came into power, there wasn't really an indicator of how the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary vis-a-vis the Deputy President would work. I think now 4 months down the line, President William Ruto is trying to really draw the line and put the fine print in terms of this will be the duties of my deputy, and this will be the duties of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. And this really being in charge of the development agenda of President William Ruto now defines what Musalia Mudavadi will be. Remember, he's always been considered as a golden boy of politics,
Which leads me up to a follow-up, right?
Yes.
Because you're saying he's in charge of the development projects of President Ruto's administration. Is he a super CS by another name? Because under President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, Fred Matiang'i wore that cap. In your view, is this a super CS by another name? In
my opinion, yes. When you ask other people, they'll say not exactly. But reading through the fine print of the Executive Order 2023, it kind of says so, because even as DP will be sitting and chairing the cabinet meetings, he gets to do the day-to-day business of administering the PSS, what his government departments doing every day. He gets to do a report in front of the cabinet meetings every Thursday or whichever day of the week they choose to sit. So
an attempt to keep them from stepping on each other's toes?
Definitely. Because once these two positions were identified, it wasn't really clear on who exactly would be doing what. And it's interesting that the Taifa Leo is now picking on Uhuru and talking about Uhuru akutana na Raila kisiri, vinara wa Azimio wakutana, ila haijabainika iwapo Kenyatta atajiuzulu. Remember in Mombasa the other day, Raila Odinga was categorical in saying that Uhuru Kenyatta is still part of the Azimio. And there are pictures of him in short trunks, and it seems like he's in a vacation mood. And ever since he left office,
who's wearing short trunks? I haven't seen these
President
pictures.
Uhuru Kenyatta.
Where?
I've just seen them in my social media pages this morning, and he seems like he was having a good time at the beach yesterday, and he was taking pictures with Kenyans, and his traditional smile was there. He seems like he's breathing through now that it's been 4 months. He's not going through the day-to-day business of administration. So it's significant to see in the next week if there will be a statement from the Azimio. Will Uhuru Kenyatta come out and say, hey, I'm still in the major politics of the Azimio coalition, or now I choose to step aside and concentrate on my diplomacy agenda, considering he's still considered a very critical part of the East African community, and he's well respected. And President William Ruto really is now taking into an already red carpet laid for him by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
And Leila, that leads me up actually to the front page of the East African. And it reads, the East Africa I Want. Kenya's President William Ruto is said to be angling for IGAD chair with the aim of stabilizing the Horn, East and Central Africa, target markets for the economy he is rebuilding. And Leila, I'd like to bring in our panelists, at least on this subject. They should be comfortable enough
of course, the region is at the heart of this conversation this morning. Good morning. How are you? Is it too late to say Happy New Year?
No, it's in order. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
President William Ruto is going into administration of the region. Now he has to understand how the region works, which country ticks. Which do you think will be his main agenda with the IGAD formation now that he seeks to become the chairman of that outfit? President, Dr. Khaninje.
Good morning, ladies. I think it's been a while since we were in this studio. I don't remember if you remember.
That's right.
Yes. It's a little redesigning of the studio. So, yeah. I think one of the things that's going to be critical is to revitalize IGAD. Part of what has faced this region is a dysfunctional IGAD in much of the last couple of years, in part because of lack of a common vision, lack of a common purpose. But as fate would have it, I think the events in the last few years that has seen, for instance, not just the Congo, DRC joining East African Community, but the conflict in Ethiopia, which is now moving in a positive direction. The successful transition in Somalia has brought new energies and new hope for IGAD countries. And right now, when you speak with IGAD diplomats, they seem to be having more or less kind of the same vision. Not exactly similar on everything, but there is a recognition that actually IGAD needs to be strengthened. Of course, Kenya had tried before to lead, for the chairmanship of IGAD, but it was confronted by some internal challenges within IGAD itself, especially the political aspects. Some of those things have now actually dissipated, and there's a lot more goodwill, and we're expecting that Nairobi should be taking over leadership IGAD in the next few months.
Dr. Zhao, climate change is at the heart of the IGAD region. Right. Some of the countries in the region are facing severe drought for the last 40 years.
That's right.
What do you think will be President William Ruto's agenda in terms of ensuring food security, especially for a large pastoral community that is losing their livelihoods in a big part of the region, including here in Kenya?
Yeah, and you will reckon that President Ruto is not really a novice in these matters of governance and statecraft, and he's really shown a lot of enthusiasm and the urge to take up leadership and show good good neighborliness in our region. You remember when President Ahmed Abiy came in Ethiopia, Prime Minister rather, there was a lot of enthusiasm because, you have this new entrant and, young blood and that kind of thing. And I think this is what has greeted President Ruto's, entry into the arena, and with a lot of goodwill from all of us, especially given the fact that we had a very smooth transition here, and Kenyans are really respecting our democratic institutions. And therefore, President Ruto is really trying to occupy that space and sort of anchor Kenya's leadership position and leadership role in the region, in the sub-region. And Kenya is very much respected in terms of its diplomacy of conflict management, as well as now the whole realm of human security. Health security, as we come out of all these pandemics now, and now environmental diplomacy. And President Ruto is saying we have to go beyond just the minimum 10% tree cover. We have to go 30%, and we'll have to plant at least 2 billion trees.
20.
By 20 billion. 20, by the year 2032. And so he's taking that leadership. We have a lot of commonalities. In fact, if you look at the weather patterns, this pocket that is just the IGAD countries up here, the Horn of Africa, Kenya, that kind of thing, Somalia, Ethiopia, we really faced with a lot of environmental stress. And there are three things that we must do to pump our economy: infrastructure, energy security, water security, which then is critical for purposes of food security. And they go together. Environment, health, infrastructure, you know, water, and of course the whole idea of health. So all those issues, they are interrelated. They're human security issues. And President William Ruto is taking a good leadership stance in the IGAD realm on the same.
And I'm sure that's a good place for the conversation to continue on the other side of the break.
Correct.
We'll be talking to Dr. Macharia next on not only President William Ruto's agenda, but Kenya's role in diplomacy, military interventions, peacekeeping missions inside the Democratic Republic of the Congo. As at now, we take a break for the moment, and when we come back, we delve into the entire region in its entirety.
My name is Norman Mudipo, former NTV business anchor and also a reporter, currently a communications consultant with Apex Porta Novelli. I was among the few who were privileged to attend the Man Cave, which was sponsored and led by Nation Media Group. I think for me, it was the first ever, the real first ever men's conference. And I know there's been all this talk around men not talking. But I think for me, that needs to change because men talked. Maybe not everyone, but men talk. And I just want to encourage men to talk because that's how you're going to cope with the stresses, with the challenges of life. The same way like the women do. So I think for me, it was an eye-opener. It was a watershed moment, and looking forward to more conversations, more sharing of experiences in February 2023.
Now lean back, lean back, lean back, lean back, come on. Hard to the easy, and to the some love them, some love them. Come on, I'm jump on them, I'm rock them. Some love them. For the best of the 2000s, tune in every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Sunday from 8 p.m. to 12 midnight. Rhythm and flow. Taking you back in the day. Nation FM.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
Do everything you can to find out who's behind all this as soon as possible.
I will. Dad, I give you my word that I will. And I won't stop till I've discovered what really happened.
I take it that you have been paying our debts?
Didn't I tell you I'd pay you back with interest? So of course I have been paying off all our debt.
What can you say about the rumors going about that the individual who is behind this unfortunate incident is a member of the De La Vega group and that he is none other than Sir Carlos De La Vega?
Ma'am, where did you get that information from?
Forever my love. Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Nenda wapi? Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. This morning we're decoding the conflict, the cause for the conflict, Kenya's role in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, what's happening with Rwanda. We hear a lot of analogies, M23, M23, yeah. There's ICRAF, you know, what do they all mean? And we're interrogating, we're interrogating all that for the laymen such as myself. I think I'm the only layman in this studio where that subject is concerned. But Leila, we had some pending business before we took the break.
Before we talk about the Great Lakes region in which now DRC gets to join the East African community and their problems become our problems, let's go back to the IGAD conversation a bit. Dr. Macharia, very good morning to you. Do you think Kenya has a great position in the IGAD scenario at the moment, considering the troubles in Ethiopia at the moment? Somalia is just now getting to stabilize itself. However, the threat of Al-Shabaab is still big for them. Djibouti is there, but it's subtle. South Sudan has its own troubles within there. Uganda is another different topic. Do you think Kenya has a chance now to really shine as it did during the Moi era in terms of regional presence?
Thank you, Leila. I think Kenya has a position in the region. Fact, because of the democratic transition that we have had, even though we've had internal issues, we've been able to contain them and sustain a very stable country. Second, if you look at the other countries in the region, Ethiopia has always taken like a leading position, but considering the internal problems currently, it gives Kenya's an upper hand. Then you look at Somalia, it's doing the best to contain the Al-Shabaab situation, and Kenya would be giving a very significant support in terms of leadership, comparing us to Somalia in terms of internal problem. We'll be at a better position, and that allow us to, as we take leadership, then it will allow us to support countries such as now Somalia in terms of building internal capacity and sustaining peace in the country. So I do think we really have a chance and a good opportunity to provide leadership in the region and sustain peace in the greater region.
All right, Dr. Hanenje, more broadly speaking, the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was known as a Pan-Africanist, at least from where I'm sitting. He's very visible as far as the AU is concerned. Even now, he's taking a leading role in terms of, by virtue of the blessing of the sitting president, William Ruto, in terms of securing peace between the Tigray region and the Ethiopian government. Even prior to that, when he was East African Community Chair, the DRC was integrated into the East African community. Do you think, what do you make of that now where President William Ruto comes in? Does he command the same respect as his predecessor? Does he have big shoes to fill? Or has President William Ruto shown himself willing to, take a step back on some of these issues and allow President Uhuru Kenyatta to continue running the race, as it were?
The former president, Uhuru, his party might not have been very successful in the past election, but I think there is no doubt that he was probably the most popular president of the continent by the time he was retiring. And a lot of it is attributed to the kind of diplomacy and just kind of the Pan-African stance that he adopted throughout his administration. And that is in part why I think the rest of the world was trying to walk through him insofar as the conflicts in the region are concerned. But any person who comes to power, of course, has always a chance to learn. And the appointment of President Uhuru by President Ruto to continue some of those efforts in recognition of the kind of diplomatic capital that he had already built. They say if it's not broken, don't fix it. And so it was working. And that recognition, because I think also the president recognizes that it is not about an individual's effort, it's a country, because it's Kenya which was engaged in that process. It's still Kenya which is engaged, for instance, in the DRC. It's Kenya which now, of course, it's at the the East African community, as a leader. And so that recognition has allowed him to continue using some of, not just the same, diplomats, but some of the same similar mechanisms, whether it's continental or international. And I think he's working hard to build on that success to ensure that Kenya gets to a place, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be about the president, it's going to be about what Kenya has done. And so I think the president is acutely aware of that role, and that's why he's using everybody, including some people perhaps who might have been perceived to be his rivals, because I think he's keen to continue Kenya's agenda in the region in terms of providing leadership, not just as that shining star on the hill, but as a country that has also registered or have become a bellwether state when it comes to democracy, is the largest and most advanced economy in the region, and is a country that the world looks up to. And Kenya recognizes its unique role, some kind of exceptionalism, despite some of the challenges that the country faces. So I think the president is acutely aware of that special place in Kenya and the role, not just that the region expects, but the world expects Kenya to actually take that leadership role.
Okay. Dr. Mumo Nzao, we have seen, just yesterday, I received an alert on my phone, and it said the President Hamdan Dagalo, Vice President of Sudan's Transition Sovereign Council, arrives in Nairobi for talks with President Ruto. Prior to this, we saw a statement he issued on South Sudan.
Yes.
Asking both parties to abide by the terms of the truce, and he talked about how there's a humanitarian crisis there, and he called for intervention. And prior to that, although some took issue with him donating aid, we did donate aid to South Sudan, but also prior to that, Somalia, and those who took
and I think, Olive, as much as people are saying there are so many Kenyans who are affected by drought, that kind of diplomacy is what Kenya needed at the time.
Exactly.
If you ask me, sending food to a neighbor who barely can survive and keeping just a little bit for yourself wasn't really something negative per se, because at the end of the day, he was trying to assert his presence in the region in one way or the other. And speaking of Sudan, Kenya has been part and parcel of the Sudan peace process since Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi's era. So I think President William Ruto will not be walking into a dark really tunnel. He has institutional memory, and that's why people like Kalonzo Musyoka, who have been inside that process, will be really critical in terms of him engaging with this matter of South Sudan. And if really Kenya doesn't try to fix the problems there, then you're told if your neighbor's house is burning, if you don't put out the fire, then it may really just cross over into your house.
Yeah, Olive, President William Ruto, Dr. Ruto is proving to be a good listener and a prudent manager of statecraft, especially when it comes to matters of defense and foreign relations and national security. He has shown a lot of respect for the security agencies and the sacrosanct that comes with that facet of the management of state affairs. And then he has projected that kind of aura into the management of regional relations in a good way. And I think what he's driving at is really trying to see how much Kenya can gain from the potential of trade, commerce, and exchange that is in our African markets. The population of Africa, and I remember President Dr. Ruto saying this when we were marking Uganda's independence, just after he took over, and he went to Kampala, and he was talking from there, and he said, we have just so much in our market, in our regional market. Kenya's, the population of this region just alone is over 500 million, just the immediate sub-region. And we are talking a population of 1.3 billion Africa put together. If you take the population of Africa, China and India, you have most of the world. And a third, of the world population is as good as just Africa itself. And he's saying the Africa Free Trade Continental Area, that's a whole mechanism right there. And he's saying then we have to start at home, we have to start in our sub-region. We have to make sure we overcome these problems. Of course, you have these groups down here, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, Dawla Islamiyya fi al-Iraq wa al-Sham, Then you have all these other dangerous terror groups. Then we have again the whole problem of drought and desertification, climate change. Then of course, problems of state formation and governance. And those are the things he's attacking head on in a very nice way. And like you said, Leila, President Ruto is looking back in history and saying, what did we do before? You remember during the El Nino phenomenon, 1998, if I'm not wrong, 97, torrential rainfall down there, deluge we say, in Mozambique. And you saw that CNN photo, that CNN coverage, the lady who delivered the mother on atop of a tree. And President Moi was so moved, he sent several tons of maize down there because people just couldn't access. The whole place was just flooded. And we had President Chisano those days. And, you know, President Chisano would speak Kiswahili. And then President Moi would call him and he'd just talk to him in Kiswahili. And it was such an endearing moment. And that is exactly what President Ruto has done. He's looking at where there's an issue and not just being opportunistic, but really trying to show the importance of three things: trade, strong institutions in our region, and of course the democracy. Then, so when there was one scholar who said, if you have trade and you have democracy and you have good institutions, you are able to uplift the people and the quality of life. And I think that is what he's driving, so that at the end, the benefits for his bottom-up philosophy will then be so many times fold. And I think it's a good sense of direction and leadership for the region.
And I think peace is at the center of all those questions that you raise. Dr. Macharia, Kenya has gone into a new sphere. During the last year of President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure, the Democratic Republic of Congo was instituted into the East African community. Their problems became our problems, and the scramble for power and resources in the eastern part of the DRC has gone on for decades, and that's where Olive comes in terms of all these acronyms that he doesn't really understand. For example, the March 23 movement, and when you say it in French, that's how the acronym comes to M23. Speaking about the former Zaire, historically, where have the problems begun in that part of the newest kid on the block in the EAC?
Okay. So when we look at DRC, I think for me, one, it's a very unfortunate situation. Going back from 1960s to date, it's the country we had the first UN peacekeeping mission, and we still continue with the peacekeeping mission. So if you look at the conflict in situations, cut into three. So you have 1960s to 1990s. And after independence of this country, then you had the overthrow of the Lumumba government. And that aspect of cessation of Katanga sets the first phase of the conflict in the region. Then you come to the space after 1990 with the Rwandan genocide. And during this period created the second aspect of the conflict in DRC Congo. With the genocide, then you had a lot of people fleeing, especially refugees from Rwanda to this country. But at the same time, you had, with the Rwanda Patriotic Front advancing into Kigali, then you had the militias fleeing also to DRC Congo. So you also attract another aspect of refugee movement, but also criminals, because these were perpetrators getting into this country. And what created the complexity was the question of them being protected, especially the Interahamwe going to the country, being accused, the DRC government being accused of protecting them, but at the same time, the Rwandan government being accused of going to look for the perpetrators of genocide, and that now bring other players into the conflict. And the result was the First World War, the first Congo War that brought in any other countries into the picture. Then you have the third aspect, where now you have countries in the neighborhood making allegations that there are groups fighting in these countries and they are perpetrating conflict within their region. So Uganda has the Allied Democratic Force.
The ones that UPDF has gone into the mountains.
That is now threatening security in Uganda, and the Kampala government has accused them of carrying out terrorist attack last year.
That
so
constituted
that's now
Operation
a
Shujaa.
problem that brings Uganda into the picture. Then on the other hand, Rwanda says, no, we do also have a problem. We have people who perpetrated genocide. They still remain in this country and constantly create a problem for us. And therefore, we need to get them out with the help of this government. So it brings Rwanda into the picture. Internally, then you have the competition for the resources. So it brings in another aspect of players. Internally, local groups fighting to access the resources, but also foreign actors who are seeking to control the resources. So if you look at the space, it has both a historical question of a boundary. Where is DRC? And you have part of the territory that was moved from Rwanda to become part of DRC Congo. And then you have transfer of population during colonial era to provide labor. So part of what you're saying is a problem. It's actually a colonial of people who are brought to provide labor. But then there's a question of their citizenship, especially when genocide situation came in. So did they come or were there before? And then now you have the neighboring problems. We're saying we do have people who've gone into this country creating problem for us. And therefore, as neighbors, we need to go in, one part help the DRC government, but the other part saying we need to get the problem from ourselves that is within your country. So you have, I would look at the conflict in those three spectrums. So there's the colonial element, then there is the question of neighbors feeling there is a problem coming from one specific country, and their effort to deal with the problem, then you create another crisis in these specific countries. Rather than in yours, it goes back to DRC Congo.
It's interesting that you speak about the colonial administration, the Belgians, who literally, many have accused them of plundering the DRC. They are the ones who created some of these boundaries. Some of those groups are speakers that are across the board, and that's why some of the communities feel that why are we being listed as part of the other country, and yet this has always been our territory for as long as we can remember. And there's also an idea that maybe those areas that are having predominantly speakers that are from across the border belonged to that other side of the border. What can you talk about in terms of leading that conversation, in terms of what the Muzungus per se created as borders and what we as Africans consider? Because even here in Kenya, we have communities that are speaking the same language across the borders. We have the Maasais, we have the Luyas in Busia, we have the Somalis on the Kenya-Somalia border. They are saying it's a similar situation inside the Kivu province.
Okay. When you look at colonialism, the Berlin Conference was a product of table discussion. So you're drawing territories and marking this my space, that is your piece. You're not physically there. And you find our boundaries are straight lines, yet we have rivers, we have hills, completely ignoring the dynamics in the region. So if you look at the boundaries, so specifically to how far are the resources in this region and how much can I be able to access those specific resources. And that determines how far do I draw my boundaries to allow access. So the demarcation was not determined on nation, but on a state. So when you say determined by a nation, then you have to consider who lives in that territory, how many are they, how far is their settlement, so that you don't separate them across different boundaries. But if the determination is a state, then you're looking at territorial occupation, regardless of who lives within that specific territories. And if you look at our colonial demarcation, it was created with an assumption nobody lives there. So the fact that nobody lives there, you don't, you draw the boundary disregarding any other cultural, ethnic, or affiliations. And that met the interest of the colonial forces. If you look at King of Belgium, consider this place a personal property. You can see the extent of ownership. It's not who is there, it's my property. And being my property, I determine how I use this property. I determine who belong and who does not belong. I determine who can come in and how I can use them. So the future story of belonging, your government will deal with it. But also note that the idea of independence was not supposed to come very soon. So there was no future of people will come back and claim we were separated from our own. So these were territories of states in the sense of colonial state. So they did not foresee a situation that local communities will come back and say, oh, we were supposed to belong here and not have that. Two, the Africans were not seen as citizens. They were part of the property of what colonial master owned. So you could not claim a citizenship. But now after we gained independence, then you start asking, so where is my citizenship? Is it where I was removed from or where I've been brought? And that now has created a consistent problem for us, and especially because there is always a blood relationship. Whether we agree to it or not, there's that feeling of those are our people, especially with border identities. There's an affiliation too. There's that feeling of responsibility to protect the ours on that other side. Quietly among our communities, there's a feeling to reach out. And that feeling to reach out sometimes creates a problem for us. Look at as the issues of refugees from Somalia and the earlier question of terrorists living in refugee camps. So why did we directly linked it to people coming from Somalia, and they're being hosted by their own people? So already you start feeling there is a connection. There's that they're ours, and the communalism among us make us feel the empathy, not even sympathy, the empathy, identify with them and see how we can protect them. But now that comes in. Yet we have sovereign states have responsibility to protect anybody found within our boundaries. So the responsibility goes back to our state, but not me as a community feeling empathy for my own in that other border. Borders become psychological for these communities. We don't see the boundaries because they're not physical. We see our own transiting on that other border. So how can we reach and help them out?
All right. Dr. Hanenje, clearly, as has been explained by Dr. Macharia, things do not happen in a vacuum. And she talked about this conflict having happened in two phases, you know, colonization, and then now the what was it called in Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda. What is the situation now? And what do you say to those people who are skeptics and they say efforts at stability in Eastern Congo are not genuine because this enables the plan of resources?
Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, I think it's a very interesting case study in state formation, but also an interesting case study in testing the agreement as Africans that we're not going to change state borders after independence, because that is something that was unanimous, and that is why a lot of Africans are reluctant to support secession movements that are going to create new states, because we agreed to that. We look at it, I think, a little bit different, you know, but I think much of what has happened, I think Dr. has explained it. But Congo, remember, is a place that the death of the first Secretary General of the United Nations happened. It has had more peacekeeping missions than I think any other country on the planet in the history of peacekeeping, since Alexander the Great. Eastern Congo right now has several missions, you know, are going on, has several countries that are trying to bring about peace. But talking about Eastern Congo specifically, you know, as it's remote from, for instance, the Katanga secessionists and stuff like that going back in the 60s, you know, where Kabila was also trying out his luck, you know, before he ran into exile. This one fundamentally, of course, has roots in colonialism, but has roots in colonialism much more in Rwanda, okay? Because one thing that happened, while the Belgians and, you know, King Leopold owned Congo, that was his personal property, which he killed more than 10 million.
Up to 1909.
Yes.
From 1885 to 1909.
So the conflict, especially the genocide in Rwanda, was the turning point in the current quagmire we see today. And the reason it was a turning point because, you know, Rwanda and Burundi had been ruled before colonialism by what we call the Tutsi aristocracy. They were the Omwamis of then the days. So the Belgians come and they realize majority of the people there were Hutus, and conveniently they actually worked when they were leaving to ensure that they have favor with those who are the majority. Now, while the Belgians and others, you know, had served to kind of reduce population pressure, for instance, in Rwanda by moving some of those people into Congo, you still had so-called ethnic Tutsis who had been in Eastern Congo long before that. But then in '59, with the change in power, you have the first genocide against the Tutsi. Thousands of them moved into Congo, moved into Uganda. For those who may not be familiar, Kagame was a refugee in Uganda from Rwanda. He moved there when he was 3 years old. Later on, rose through the ranks of Ugandan military.
He served in the military.
Yes, to actually become, I think, the head of presidential security. Yeah, before General, I think, was it Fred Rwigema died, who was leading the RPF. That is when actually Kagame came back to take over the RPF in the early 90s. And so you're having this history of, for instance, the Tutsis who fought in Museveni's war against Amin and other dictators in Uganda, trying to find a way back home. They tried to go back home at a time when you had a Hutu-dominated government of Juvenal Habyarimana, who was a very close friend to Mobutu Sese Seko, Kukungubendu Wazabanga, as he liked to call himself. But then the moment the plane was shot down, where they're coming from Arusha, in fact, Kenya was actually part of that process. I think George Saitoti was one representing the country. It killed both the president of Burundi as well as the president of Rwanda. Now, at that time, they were trying to negotiate a pact, and apparently, there are conflicting stories. Some say it is RPF that shot the president. Others say it is people who were opposed to the deals that, the concessions that the president had made with RPF. Because even at that time, 600 RPF soldiers were actually in Kigali as part of the arrangements. And so when the genocide began on April 6th, it targeted largely ethnic Tutsis and the so-called moderate Hutus, you know. And what happened is they ended up losing the government. So they lose the government, it pushes refugees into Eastern Congo, and the former genocidaires, the Interahamwe and 150,000 military from Rwanda. Then they start using Eastern Congo as a launchpad. In fact, they were working so hard to actually prevent refugees from returning, because then that provided them, number one, with a safe haven, you know, number two, an excuse to be able...
Insurgency.
Yeah, insurgency. Three, you know, a group where you can easily mobilize from. And so that calculation also informed Kagame's attempted intervention initially into Congo as a way to destroy those refugee camps so they don't become launching pads against Rwanda. And so when it began, what happened, Kagame did not expect to actually have a lot of success initially. And I remember listening to him on BBC, you know, after, of course, the rebels captured Goma. Then it turned out that Congolese military was not very prepared under Mobutu Sese Seko at all, you know. And so backing the rebels, of course, with his then friend Museveni, you know, they ended up, of course, taking over Kinshasa. For those of people who are watching who are old enough, you remember the talks were being held here in Safari Park. And Kabila was very adamant. It came to a ceasefire. He said, we fight as we talk as we fight. You know, and of course,
Laurent or Joseph?
Yeah,
Laurent
Kabila.
Laurent Kabila.
No, this was still a kid.
This was his father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so what happens is you have that, but then after Kabila came into power, there was a disagreement between those who had brought him to power, because now Kabila was facing pressure from the Congolese people to have actually these Rwandan troops and other forces get out of Congo. That led pretty much to the assassination
on the 16th of January 2001
of the president. You know, and it was partly also inspired by, because I remember Kabila, I think he put in prison Bizima Kara, who was foreign affairs minister, who was ethnic Tutsi in Congo. And immediately, much of Eastern Congo actually fell to the rebels because it was being commanded by, mostly ethnic, generals and stuff like that. So that created almost permanent, hostility, because it's like, we helped you because we do not want to face genocide again. And if you want to understand partly the role of Rwanda, that is something I think which is not being sometimes appreciated. Mm-hmm. I always compare sometimes Rwanda, especially within the Great Lakes region, with the mentality that the Israeli state has within the Middle East. Is if we don't rely on ourselves, we're going to face another Holocaust. Mm-hmm. Because when we suffered genocide and Holocaust, no one came to our aid. Today in Eastern Congo, as we speak, there's been ethnic cleansing of the Tutsis, actually. Has been going on. It's horrific. Now, that is left out in the discussions. So what, of course, we're looking at is what other state actors are doing. But the question of the Tutsi identity in terms of their belongingness and their acceptability into the state, for instance, is critical. And as long as that is not going to be addressed, it's going to be extremely difficult to actually solve the problem. Mm-hmm. We can disarm M23 today, but we're not going to disarm the Rwandan state. Okay. We can disarm one group, but then if you are not addressing the fundamental aspects of it, it's going to be extremely difficult. And so you are having a situation where, for instance, the M23, the March 23 agreement from 2009, mm-hmm. part of it because it had integrated these rebels, but then they accused the government in 2012 of not having honored the agreement, and that is why they went back into the bush, see. And so the complexity there, of course, you have resources because a lot of also militias, remember, we were just focusing on M23, but there are more than 100 militia groups in Eastern Congo. Actually. Yes, more than 120. So there are a lot. So you have resources which is involved in it. You have countries, for instance, Kampala and both Kampala and Kigali have been accused of exporting minerals that they don't have. Mm-hmm. Exporting gold that they don't have. So there are interests here. But another aspect we're also leaving out is, apart from M23, who is arming also these other militias? Now you have also international players. If you remember, and I think this is my final point because I need to have my colleagues, add value to this. In 1997, as soon as Lubumbashi fell, Lubumbashi is a very rich province. Okay, a lot of Western multinationals rushed to sign contract with Kabila. He wasn't president yet, and it was done openly. So you have interest, and it's not just about the West. You have multinationals, you have companies, extractive industries that they want to actually continue this. And so when a state is a little bit disorganized, what happens is you create room for that exploitation. And so Congo is an unfortunate child who just happened to have been born rich. And so everybody somehow wants to have a piece of it. But fundamentally, within the East African setting, we need to recognize certain realities. How can we prevent foreigners from coming to interfere with us, number one? Two, but then how can we fix our own ethnic and national questions that we haven't addressed sufficiently yet? Because if we don't address that, again, that problem is not going to go away in DRC. We may solve all other conflicts in the Congo, but in Eastern Congo, it's going to be a problem.
All right, so we need to take a break, Leila.
We do, but when we come back, we need to delve into these acronyms, and we'll begin with ECRAF and their recent engagements with Rumangabo military camp. That was one of what they consider their biggest win of 2023.
That's right.
When we come back from this break.
See you on the other side.
My skin is my identity, my strength. It's unique and deserves care made specially for me. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care with 5 oils and 5 vitamins. 48-hour nourishment. Helps reduce appearance of stretch marks in just 2 weeks. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care for your shade of beautiful.
Frequent droughts and floods have reduced Namibia's agricultural output and threatened its sustainable economic growth. But now the country is exploring seaweed as a potential solution to climate change.
The African gaming industry has been growing very fast over the years. This week, I interact with developers and gamers in Kenya to understand the emerging opportunities in original, locally produced games.
These Senegalese divers are looking for life, but most of the fish they find are dead.
When you throw away something in the streets in Senegal, it will go in the sea. When it goes in the sea, indirectly it will reach in our plate.
Recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Daring Abroad makes me dare. It's the only show of its kind in the world. And now, it's bigger.
And even more entertaining and informative than before.
Hapa kunaitwa Kakoe na inatubaba sana.
From London to Jersey Island.
Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo to the scenic features of Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
And many more places abroad and at home.
I watch Daring Abroad. I like the stories which people bring.
Daring Abroad every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. with repeats every Sunday at 1:30 p.m. on NTV.
If what you want is a husband with a lot of money, then I'm telling you that you were mistaken.
No, I didn't make a mistake with you. I made a mistake with us.
Be careful of a person who is not whom she says she is. She's going to arrive in your life and cause a lot of harm.
Oh my goodness, the horoscope said that? I'm really very worried now. No, I'm really worried, Marbella.
Well, keep on laughing. Are you finished?
You better leave her alone right now, or I will smash your face in.
You watch your mouth. I'm your older brother.
Oh, really? Are you my brother?
Hey, stop it, you two. Stop it.
Heck is wrong with you, huh?
Break
well,
it.
you're just
Break
like
it.
your father, huh?
Enough.
It had to be you.
This Christmas, gift yourself, friends and family with phones, more phones, and even more phones. Get up to 36% off on selected items. Offers are available at Safaricom shops, dealers and masoko.com.
Good morning and welcome back to AM Live. Leila Mohammed here, co-hosting with Olive Barros. And today we're talking about the Congo region, the troubles within the Congo, and we were talking about the history. Now we are looking into the peace processes that have gone on. Dr. Nzau, we've had military interventions by the United Nations. It began with MONUC in the late 70s, turned into MONUSCO, and under MONUSCO, the trouble was too much. They had to create a special forces group called the Force Intervention Brigade, and that's where really Kenya came fast into the Congo peace process, and we sent in the Quick Rapid Force. This is a team of serious members of the military, and then Kenyan troops also have undertaken peace efforts under the general MONUSCO agenda. Remember, MONUSCO is not only a military force, there is the civilian component and the police units, just like what we're seeing with AMISOM and ATMIS inside Somalia. And then there's the new kid on the block, ECRAF, the East African Community Regional Force. A Kenyan general, Major General Jeff Nyaga, is in charge of that force. However, we know that the region has several battalions inside the north and southern parts of Kivu province, inside the DRC. And we were just having a chat with Dr. Mashare before the break, and she was telling us that North and South Kivu is 7 times bigger than the size of Rwanda. Kenya can go into DRC, I think 2 or 3 times, 2.5. Looking at some of the positives that ECRAF has been able to achieve in the last few weeks. In December, they took over Kibumba. On January 6th, they took over Rumangabo, which is used to be a military installation for FDRC. However, it's been a mixed reactions among communities. Some of the members are saying M23 is blowing hot and cold because remember, just after Christmas, there was that war inside the Virunga National Park, and the concerns that now that they're leaving these areas, they are regrouping to other significant parts of the eastern DRC. Speaking about Rumangabo, how significant is it of an achievement for ECRAF forces to take over that bit?
Yes, a good, depiction of, of operational leadership on the part of Major General Jeff Nyaga, an officer I have trained, and very proud of, all through from his tasks in Somalia and so on, a fighter, but also not just to be out there to harm civilians, but really to protect civilians. The bigger strategy is under the Africa Peace Security Architecture, the East Africa Force in the Congo right now is part of that arrangement. The East Africa Standby Forces arrangement was such that a sub-region can easily form a rapid force and take it into a region to solve its problems. Africa has realized that it must take ownership of its problems. And that is what, especially problems of state formation, and that is why everyone has gone in there to help DRC to stabilize. Why? So that we can do business. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with extraction, as long as it is not a clandestine, and a duress, and other bad things that have been going on down there. Up to mercenaries working down there. And some of them running some of those militias that you know those ones, Mai Mai, Mai Mai ya Kutumba, a very bad one down there, Mai Mai ya Kutumba, they just harm children and women and such things in Goma. So all these issues, we have to look at them from a strategic perspective. Where is the region going? The region wants to disentangle itself from the problems of the past, from the baggage, neo-colonial baggage, the neo-colonial interference, and big politics and big power, isostatic adjustments playing out in
That's a big word. What's isostatic?
It's like you lose and then you compensate yourself here, and it's a kind of a strategic game. And therefore, at the end of it, our leaders come to the realization that our people are fighting and they're divided, and a lot of historical ties being ignored, like what Dr. Macharia was saying here. Everyone is talking about people from other countries who are in DRC, but there are people who are just ethnic, ordinary people who speak Kinyarwanda, even Uganda and all these things, Kiganda and so on, who are in Eastern DRC. They were born there from time immemorial. I told you about the king who was ostracized by the Belgians from Rwanda, Urundi those years, and he went into DRC, King Musinga, and he became a king there until he died, because he found ethnic, you know, what you would call ethnic Tutsi there, and they recognized him. So what are we saying? We must be able to ensure that we continue to build a state of harmony between the historical and political attributes of statehood and the cultural and territorial attributes of nationhood on the other, so that our people can appreciate it, so that we build another Schengen area. Everyone wants to be like the way Europe is doing, EU. People just agreed. We have fought all these world wars here. We killed each other here. There was a Holocaust down here. But where did it take us? And so we can make our own Schengen zone here. We can make our own nice thing here so that people can trade across Uganda, across Rwanda, across DRC, and so on. And for me, really, that is the issue, no matter how much we problematize the issues. Now, we have to balance the hard and soft power. There is the whole idea of military operations. They have to go together with political will and diplomatic tact, and very nice handling of statecraft. And that is why President William Ruto, in his wisdom, then said, Dr. Ruto said, Uhuru. And President Uhuru has this charm. And then these guys around there, they respect him and this kind of thing. And for that reason, as diplomats then talk, as President Uhuru engages these leaders in the region and so on, President Kagame, you know, all these other presidents, President of Angola, and all these countries, at the same time, General Nyaga and his colleagues from the region, because Kenya has 900 troops there. These others should bring up to about 1,800. So another additional brigades, so about 3 brigades. So we are heading towards a division down there. It's a good thing, but it's not just about, remember, MONUSCO has 14,000 troops. 14,000 troops there. And it has been one of the biggest, except Liberia. Liberia had 180,000 over time, that mission in Liberia. But compared again over time, Congo, also DRC Congo. So the idea is to enable more communication, more trust, you build more trust, and commitment to the, to follow through the commitments that the various, factions down there make. So the more you build trust, the more you are able to enable the people to move around, because, in DRC Congo, so sad to say, there is not a person there who cannot tell you one time in their life they've not been a refugee or something. They are always on the move. And therefore, we must be able to decipher those issues and make them work. It is not a competition. And that's what General Nyaga said. We don't want to go and shoot people down there. It's just to negotiate, talk well, and then in the fortunate situations where then force has to be met with force, it has to be well thought out and have the backing of the actors. Remember, DRC Congo belongs to the Congolese.
And that's what President Uhuru Kenyatta said in the Nairobi meeting in Safari Park, that even as the region gets into DRC, they have to want it for themselves.
For themselves.
I think
that's right.
And speaking of wanting it for themselves, I'm listening to you guys, and it sounds like there's so many players. You talked about 120, is it?
Yeah, militia groups,
in the DRC. Yeah. Now, and you talked about hard and soft power. So speaking of the soft power, how have they maneuvered so that all these players are on the table? Dr. Macharia.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you. I think one of the things we've seen with the East Africa Standby Force is, I think last week they did a patrol, part of assuring the citizen of their security and also fact-finding. How is the situation on the ground? And I think that's a good initiative, because it's almost creating a relational. We were not here for combat, but you're here to guarantee your security. I think the second thing that you've seen with ICRAF is combining political dialogue and the deployment. And you've affirmed what the former president Uhuru said, nchini yenu. So you've to think, lazima muipende. You have to love this country regardless of the situation. And by loving it, then it means you're willing to participate in a process that bring harmony. So the fact that they are combining the two, political dialogue, as we bring in M23 and other players to the table, then we have a force on the ground that is keeping calm in the situation, assuring citizens that you can come back home, that the government is here to take care of you. But also the fact that M23 is though delayed, but it's taking that initiative of saying, I said I will leave in goodwill. So it doesn't mean immediately means peace. Of course, there is absence of violence by way of withdrawal. But the fact that they are also reciprocating and saying, we said we'll move from this part, we've moved from this part, from these sections. But now the question is, where are they going? Because the agreement in the Luanda summit was they go back to the initial
territory around the mountains.
Yes. That is what, so have they reached there? And if they have not reached there, where they are, because that now affect this a cordial relationship and harmonious and the initial steps that are being created towards future sustainability of peace of the region.
That's right.
And as a follow-up to that, Dr. Hanenje, for me at least, before I allow Leila to get Leila's more detailed interrogation of the situation there, why can't Kenya just step back and say, let the strongest man emerge victor? Why are we going through all this trouble?
That's a nice one.
You know, there is an African adage that comes from the spirit of Ubuntu that says, I am because you are because we are. My safety, my progress can only go insofar as yours is concerned, which means as countries in the region, and I think with the increasing recognition that we actually need African solutions to African problems. And in the spirit of East African community, Kenya's involvement in efforts to bring about peace and order in DRC or in Ethiopia, it's not an option. It is an imperative, it's a duty. For us to make any progress within the region, we have seen Kenya has been one of the biggest hosts in terms of refugees in the history, actually, in the last 50 years. At some point, Kakuma was the largest refugee camp on earth and the third largest city in Kenya. You know, now maybe it's number 4, we don't know. And so, to the extent that Kenya aspires to grow, to become perhaps an upper income country, we are a country that is devoid of the resources, for instance, of some of the countries that made progress have. We don't have the natural resources like gold or oil. There is a little bit in Turkana, but it cannot even fuel the cars that go to Kitale. You know, not trying to look down upon it, but it's still too little. Stabilizing the region is a strategic national interest issue for Kenya, but it's also a national security issue for Kenya. If we are not economically viable, we will not be able to feed our own people. In the president's new agenda, you know, he aspires, for instance, to raise as much revenue as possible so that we don't have, for instance, to borrow extensively. How are we going to do that if we're not unable to even do business with our region? We understand that today as we speak, Kenya Commercial Bank and Equity control a massive stake within the Congo. There is potential for tons of business from Kenya to actually go into Congo. In fact, Congo offers the East African community the greatest potential for collective growth. And therefore, it is in our national interest as a country to ensure that our neighbors, who are actually our brothers, most of them, because a great majority of Kenyans happen to be Bantu at the same time. Yeah. Virtually every Congolese is Bantu. And that is, according to the people in Africa, that is actually where Kenyans came from before we went all the way to Southern Africa and then ran back from the Mfeken Wars.
Yeah, we came from there.
Yes, yes. And so it is not even an option. And so Kenya standing up in recognition of also of the challenges the region is feeling, it is a natural role that it has to play. And any Kenyan leader is going to actually recognize that. Of course, at some point, I think we had taken our foot off the pedal. And there is always a way in which sometimes you become too comfortable. And then what happens? Generally, the hyenas and the vultures just come and eat our lunch. And I think there's a recognition from even the previous administration, and especially now this administration, that we need to restore the rightful place for Kenya in the region in terms of leadership, but also in terms of initiative. But we also have to lead by example. And that is why this just concluded election was something that was very good in terms of our story, but in terms of also our soft power influence. Now, why can't we also just stay away and have the biggest party wins? Because guess what? The biggest party is never going to win. And the reason, because there is no party that is big enough in Congo to control all the other parties. And so what is going to happen is everybody's going to control the little safe place, the little territory here and there, and balkanize the country, because they all have access to resources, and somehow they all have access to external kind of support, whether it's private or governmental, in ways that it will perpetuate the Congolese conflict ad infinitum. And that is not something as a region we should allow to happen.
Dr. Khanenje, before I speak to Dr. Nzau, there's something that has come out of the war in Congo lately, the propaganda war. Right now, the steps that are being made positively by the ECRAF mission, there's this propaganda war that Kenya has gone there with their own interest, and they are collaborating with the M23, and it's a bad thing for Congolese people. How then does Kenya, in its vision to enable sustainability of peace in that part of that country, wade through such propaganda and stay focused?
What Kenya should focus on is not, you know, they say in Swahili, kelele za chura mzui tembo kunywa maji. Listening to some of these echo chambers is not going to be fruitful. Kenya should stand on the side of history. And right now is on the side of history. I don't think it's in cahoots with M23. And majority of Congolese, I think, they are in support of Kenya's current engagement. Majority of the world, they are in support. Whether you just look at the sentiments or even talk to diplomats, whether from Europe or elsewhere, or the United States, they are actually in support of Kenya's current engagement. Because you cannot allow conflict to continue ad infinitum. What people might not also understand is, since 2000, I think more than 5 million Congolese people have died in there. More than 5 million. Okay, starvation, rape, war. And it has probably had more rape as a weapon of war cases than probably since the Second World War. You know, it's been very bad. And so if we just stay back and say, well, let Congolese people solve their own issues, yet they have not built sufficient institutions and capacity to do that. Remember, Congo is actually, it's not 12 times the size of Kenya. It's more than 4 times the size of Kenya.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's a massive country. You have a new administration that is struggling to try and maintain order. People have never reached, Congolese people have never reached most of the Congo. They will never reach most of Congo in their life. It's not just because it's big, also infrastructure is wanting, and yet it's one of the richest countries on earth. And so, to the extent that Kenya has to be involved, it has to learn to cut out the noise. We should, of course, Kenya is also pursuing interest. And what's the interest of Kenya? Is a stable region. Because a stable region, a stable Congo is good for Kenya, for Uganda, for Somalia, for all countries, and it's good for Africa. and for the global south. Correct. There are people who perhaps may not want to see that, but I think because we took it upon ourselves as Africans to say we're going to help our brothers and sisters in Congo fix it, I don't think this is the time that Kenya should give up. And if certain sacrifices have to be made by us, we'll be making it because we not only do we love Congo, but we also love Kenyans enough to be able to create opportunities for them, both within Kenya and within the region.
Yes,
Dr. Musau,
Dr.
we've gone in Momo. I'm sorry. We've gone into Somalia for the last decade, and the AMISOM, it's now reverted to ATMIS. It's a transitionary period. They're expected to leave in 2024. That's a conversation for later. When we first went there under Operation Linda Nchi, we went with a conventional warfare system, and we found a guerrilla warfare there. We could be finding a similar situation with the warfare of the guerrillas going into the mountains. How then does this become a challenge for peace enforcement? Because I know ECRAF's main mission was to disarm some of these groups, but just in case they are forced to use force, how do they engage with an enemy who understands the territory and the region quite well?
Of asymmetric warfare. Well, of course, by the time these missions are deployed, they have mandates. And these mandates get into the recipe that comes out with a mandate of a mission is both at the strategic level, where you have policy issues and strategic issues. Then you have those operational and tactical matters that you're talking about. Now, the bigger picture, at the policy level, at the strategic level, what are we looking at? China today regards itself not as a developed country, but a middle-level developing socialist state that has managed to pull out 1 billion people out of poverty. Since 1949, since they created the Communist Party, 1921, they were celebrating 2021, 100 years. 2049, they are celebrating 100 years of that revolution. But the point is, what did China do? It has managed to pull 100 billion, 1 billion people out of poverty, and that is what our president is saying. We must pull out at least 35 million Kenyans out of abject poverty. That's the bottom-up philosophy. You can't do it alone. You need your region. And in this region, we have the mighty Congo, the river that can power the entire Africa with electricity. Clean energy. The entire Africa, even we can export. And we are well aware of that. We are not going to loot in the Congo. We want energy for Africa. And then, as we were sitting back, and as people were just saying, let the Congo be, there were these rebel groups, but not just ordinary rebel groups, but very dangerous terrorist groups. Some of them that are being formed, they are being formed by Daesh, Dawla Islamiyya fil Iraq wa Al-Sham. Do you know what the group is calling itself right now in the Congo? And it's working with ADF, Medina Etawid wa Mujahideen. Now that group means, it sounds like a very good name, yeah? Holy warriors and city of monotheism and holy warriors. They were responsible for the attacks in Kampala. They can do them here. And, of course, without entering into issues of operations, we know that some of those groups are working very closely with Al-Qaeda in Mogadishu, in Somalia, and across regions. It's a whole web of terror groups. And therefore, we are not there by accident. We must go there and confront the problem. But the bigger problem is what? Is to pull our people out of abject poverty so that we can stop these people being hired around by militias and so on. It's a poverty trap. You just get someone in the Congo walking with a rifle, Kalashnikov. What are they doing? It's just a poverty trap, And we really have got to come out of it. And we have also to confront the world on these matters in terms of global inequality, because it is just an eyesore on the face of the global south. And therefore, we have to confront these issues with that kind of seriousness. Of course, there's the question about procedural and circumstantial issues, especially at the tactical and operational level. But we have done this. Kenya has been in peacekeeping, peace operation, peace enforcement missions for the last 35 years. And we most, experienced in these matters of peace diplomacy and peace. And it's better to build peace than just to go and fight. And these missions have very clear mandates. You don't go there to shoot at people. You want to make sure the women and children are safe. And you engage from the political, the diplomatic, and then, of course, a little bit of the hard power. And the hard power, remember, like I told you, there's Medina Tawhid wa Mujahideen there, and other dangerous groups down there that also have a link with what is happening in Cabo Delgado. So all these are issues that we must look at a very mature kind of thing, and very well strategic foresight that we need. And I think with former President Uhuru there, with the backing of our dear head of state, President Dr. William Ruto, and our regional partners and global partners, we should be able to stabilize that region so that we can do commerce, exchange, trade, and pull our people out of abject poverty. It is the eyesore of the global south.
Dr. Macharia, at the end of it all, we are expecting that the international Great Lake region's agenda, which guided the Angola November 23rd mission, and that's basically where Uhuru Kenyatta gains his directions towards fostering peace diplomatically in Eastern DRC. We've seen MONUSCO facing several challenges inside Goma. How then does Uhuru Kenyatta use the diplomatic aspect so that he can give some reprieve for the ICRAF mission, even as we are aware it had initially been given just 6 months? In the next few seconds, because the director is in my ear.
Okay, I think so far the former president, with the support of our current president, Dr. William Ruto, I think that that support has been very key for him to play his role as the facilitator in this process. But I think also bringing all the parties to the sustaining the political dialogue, where he said every party has a stake in DRC Congo, and not as an intervening force, that is ICRAF. As a stake is in supporting, ensuring that a move towards peace. So for President Uhuru, I think one, sustaining the dialogue among the key stakeholders. Number two is keeping a conversation with the head of state in the region. So constant that conversation is an assurance that East Africa community is not just about trade, but it's also about security and stability in the region. And like my colleagues have said, for us to make the business, for our partners, including DRC, to use our Mombasa port, then we need to sustain peace in the region. So for me, I think for Uhuru, we need to sustain the political dialogue. And then number two, he also needs to sustain the diplomatic conversation between him as the lead in terms of the peace process with the head of state in the region, without the fear of the use of the use of force by the players, because that is the last resort. It's not premise that the force went to use force. It's the last. And so far we can see the parties are giving him a positive response, because if they didn't withdraw, I think it would be a harder conversation for him. But the fact that they've been responsive, they have moved from this region, I think that's a good pace for him to start the year, especially last week. The military base is now free. I think it's a good response for him to continue with the process. And I think as a country, we are doing well so far. And I believe we will achieve a greater stability in the region.
All right. And we'll wind up the conversation there on that positive note. She believes that we will achieve stability in the region. I believe sentiments shared by the rest of the panelists. Dr. Hassan Hanenje, Horn Institute, Dr. Mumo Nzao. I think Leila tried to combine the two. The Mumo and the Nzao baptized Musa, but he is a security advisor as well as statecraft expert and peace and conflict expert. And that is Dr. Hannah Macharia. She also teaches at the Kenyatta University on these subjects as well. Leila, if you just search for more information, because I know we can't cover everything in the course of the time we've had, just search Uhuru DRC Nation Gazeti Yetu on YouTube. The first video you'll find there is Uhuru reads riot act to organizers of DRC peace talks. There's even a video of him in the Congo. Ex-President Uhuru Kenyatta interacts with IDPs in Goma, DRC. So more content on our online channels, NTV Kenya, Nation. Leila Mohammed.
And Uhuru Kenyatta is going back to DRC in the course of the first quarter of 2023. We will be bringing you those communications as and when they do happen. But for the moment, it's been a pleasure hosting AM Live with you today. I have been Leila Mohammed and always be Olive.
And I'm Olive Barrows. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow on AM Live. We're interrogating matters taxes. See you then.